Turned red last night as a landmark restaurant went up in flames. Delevan's restaurant at 199 Canada Street was engulfed in flames as firefighters arrived just before midnight. The restaurant had been closed for the winter. A mutual aid call was put out quickly and 6 fire companies came to the scene. Firefighters had to work hard to keep flames from spreading to a chicken barbecue restaurant on one side and the House of Frankenstein Wax Museum on the other. No one was hurt. Arson investigators don't think there's anything suspicious about the fire. They aren't exactly sure how it started, but it appears to have been accidental. The electricity to the building was still hooked up. Delevan's restaurant wasn't the only casualty of last night's fire. The Lake George Volunteer Fire Department lost yet another truck because of mechanical problems. Chris Bruner reports that the department has had to borrow equipment just to stay in business.
There's another story behind the burned-out hulk of Delevan's restaurant here in Lake George. It's the story of a fire company trying to stay in business with broken and borrowed equipment.
By any standard, this was a bad fire last night. The building was completely gutted, but it was also devastating for the Lake George Volunteer Fire Company.
Things started going downhill for the department last August when one of their tanker pumper trucks hit a car head-on. That truck has been out of commission ever since. Then last night, the department's other ladder pumper made it to the fire scene but promptly conked out. It had to be towed back to the station this morning. Mechanics were at work trying to figure out what was wrong and how much it would cost to fix. Luckily, there was enough pressure in village water mains to allow continued use of the aerial hose on the crippled truck. But had this been in a rural area where there are no fire hydrants, the truck would have been useless.
Well, it puts us pretty short in the town and the village. And the only thing that we've got that's bailed us out is that Queensbury Central has loaned us a fire truck. And that's the only thing that's keeping our heads above water.
It'll cost about $150,000 to replace the truck that crashed in August. Unfortunately, the fire department budget is only $100,000 a year.
These pieces of equipment don't come cheap.
No, they sure don't. If we can get this one back up and running, that'll suffice for the time being. But we still have that truck that's been out of service since August that nothing is happening about. We're not getting good results.
In the meantime, the department will rely on the borrowed truck and on mutual aid agreements. And that means anytime they show up at a fire of any size, other fire companies in neighboring areas have to be called in. Chris Bruner, the 30-Minute News, Lake George.
A Lake George restaurant is nothing but ashes tonight after a 5-alarm fire overnight. Officials say the fire at the Delevan restaurant on Canada Street broke out just before midnight. Firefighters from the 5 companies were able to bring it under control by 1 this morning. The cause is under investigation. And we want to thank Rudy Green, a fireman in Queensbury, for shooting that video. He called us on our news line this morning to tell us about the fire and that he had shot it with his home camera.
Firefighters arrived just before midnight. Delevan's restaurant on Canada Street was already engulfed in flames. Part of the battle was to save an adjacent restaurant and the Frankenstein Wax Museum. No one was hurt. Investigators believe the fire was started by accident. The Lake George Volunteer Fire Department has been forced to get by with a lot of help from its friends. Last night during the Delevan's fire, another piece of firefighting equipment was knocked out of service. And as Chris Bruner reports, the department doesn't have much left.
There's another story behind the burned-out hulk of Delevan's restaurant here in Lake George. It's the story of a fire company trying to stay in business with broken and borrowed equipment.
By any standard, this was a bad...
A popular restaurant in downtown Lake George has been destroyed by flames. It happened early this morning at Delevan's restaurant on Canada Street. That's next to the House of Frankenstein Wax Museum. No one was inside at the time and there were no injuries. Fire officials say the blaze may have been triggered by faulty electrical equipment. Meanwhile, 13 southern...
On Canada Street around midnight. And we got video of that fire from Queensbury fireman Rudy Green. We'd like you to call us if you shoot anything on home video equipment that might be newsworthy.